In this series of videos, we're going to explore how to populate an autocomplete text view. An autocomplete text view is like the screen we're looking at, where I can start typing in a name like Magnolia, and as I type the name, it will automatically complete. Now, why do we want to do this? Two of several reasons, both of them related to Android quality guidelines. First of all, Android quality embraces three words: simplify, enchant, and amaze. Simplify means do things in fewer clicks. So minimize the number of clicks that a user requires to do an operation. Minimize the number of screens. If you think of a traditional search, we might have to start typing a word and then hit search, and then see results, and then select a result. That's a total of about 3 clicks or 3 screens that we have to go through. But with an autocomplete text, we can stay on one screen, and as we type, it autocompletes for us. The other reason is, decide for me, but let me have the final say. So if we take a look at this, this is another one of the Android quality guidelines under simplicity. So what we're doing when we do an autocomplete is we're deciding for the user what the user wants to enter. But if the user chooses to enter something else, the user may continue to type and may enter something else. So in other words, unlike a drop-down or radio buttons or a checkbox, an autocomplete does not restrict the user to a predefined set of tasks. Now, this is going to take several steps, and so we're going to break this into several videos. First of all, we have to find our source data. Our source data in this case is going to be a list of plants, and specifically genus, species, cultivar. There's a list of plants in JSON format that's available on plantplaces.com, and that's going to be our source data. But even without that, there are several other places where you can find source data. Several JSON feeds for things like weather, stock quotes, movie trivia, and the like. You can search online and certainly find many sources of JSON data. Right now, many cities are getting into an open data initiative where they make data like crime reports, crime statistics, public transit, things like that, available in a JSON stream. Okay, next we're going to have to create a DTO. We don't want to think of data as a string. We want to think of it as a more intelligent concept. A DTO is a data transfer object, or a collection of attributes that make sense when they're grouped together. Things like a 1998 Chevrolet Cavalier that's blue, those are attributes, and those are things we would group together in a car DTO. In our case, we're going to make our plant DTO, and the plant DTO is going to have things like the genus, the species, the cultivar, the common name of the plant, perhaps some other information like does it contain edible parts, where is its origin, things like that. All of these characteristics will come together and form what we call a DTO. After that, we're going to want to make an interface and a stub. Now, a stub is just kind of like a hard-coded implementation that gives back a predictable set of data. So why do we want to make an interface and a stub? It's going to help us to think about what our final implementation is going to be. It's going to help us to work out some kinks. Also, it allows us to work in parallel so that multiple people can work on a project at the same time, and the thing that helps them communicate, or the golden nail that ties all of their pieces together, is this thing called an interface. And then a stub is just a dummy implementation that we create up front that allows us to work with each other but continue to work on a true implementation at the same time. Additionally, stubs and interfaces help us to think about how we would write unit tests. Next, we have to thread when we're doing a network operation, because there can be a lag when we're doing a network operation, or if we don't have network access, it might time out. Threading is very important there because it's going to keep our user interface interactive as we're doing this background process. Luckily, as part of Android programming, we have this thing called an async task. And an async task makes threading very simple. Not very simple, but at least easier than doing it on our own from the ground up. Once we've done all that, we'll be ready to create the implementation class. And for this, we're going to need a low-level network data access object, or a network DAO. That's going to do things like invoke our URL that's going to return JSON data. But it could invoke any URL. It's simply invoking a URL and giving us back a string, and then we need to do something with that string. In our case, it's going to be a JSON string. JSON is JavaScript object notation, and it's a light way to represent a various amount of data. It's a light way to represent data in a structured format, but without a whole lot of overhead. So it's ideal for something that might be restricted, where we have maybe limited network access or limited network speeds, as we'll find a lot of times on our mobile devices. Now, it might take a while to download the data. Despite the best of our efforts, we have 3,000 plants, so that might take some time to download. We don't want to freeze up the user interface. We also don't want to mislead the user if we haven't downloaded all of the data. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a progress bar, and the progress bar is going to show, when we're downloading the data, it's going to show our progress and show the user that we're actively updating our data. After that, we're going to take the data and we're going to wire it up to the AutoCompleteTextView, which means we're going to provide the data from our local data source to this AutoCompleteTextView where we can start typing a name. Now, the Apple quality guidelines indicate that we want to use an AutoCompleteTextView, but if we do, we want to do it from local data. We don't want to do network data, because every time I type, it's going to be filtering this data source, and if we pulled that data from an online source, it would take a lot of time every time we typed a letter, or it just wouldn't be fast enough to be practical. So the Apple quality guidelines, and very similar the Android quality guidelines, are going to want us to pull from a fast and local data source, and that's why we're going to want to create this all and store it locally. So in addition to having our JSON feed, we're going to want to store this in a SQLite database. That's another step we're going to need to do, is create the SQLite database. So quite a bit to go here. We have quite a bit that we want to work on, but the end result is that we're going to have an app that is very usable and very functional and very user-friendly. So I look forward to going through the rest of these videos. I'll put them all together in a playlist in YouTube, and as always, I welcome your comments and feedback. Thank you.